Uh,
Please, others, mute your mic.
Okay. Good morning to everyone. And now, first of all, I would like to thank that OSICON and Ocean Society of India for giving me this opportunity and invited me to give this talk on this important occasion. And before I go into the talk, I would like to extend my warm congratulations and wishes to all these awardees, especially Professor Jayachandran, Professor Dr. Sailesh Naik, and other students and dissertation people who all got that awards. My best wishes and congratulations to everyone. And I will just go into that my talk. So the title is Are Indian Coastal Seas Really Polluted? I just thought there would be many youngsters who would be attending to this particular OSICON symposium, that conference. And I thought that an upcoming and burning issue is not only related to polluted, but there are some issues related to the literatures which have been published also has got some issues. So I just would like to present few of these concepts in this talk. These are the three listed hypotheses for my talk today. One is that it's generally perceived that Indian coastal seas are significantly polluted. So that is going to be tested, and then I'm going to touch upon that. Second is that there are views that coastal hypoxia along the west coast of India is naturally derived, as well as it is like human induced also. So there also I'm going to give a brief touch on what our latest studies have proved that, and also that how that some of the literature publications on important aspects related to that Indian environmental scenario has been projected in a different angle, which is not true to the best of our understanding. So these three aspects I will just touch upon briefly. So on the first point, we know very well that these are the sources of nitrogen to the coastal waters, reverse discharge, atmospheric deposition, and then third is main submarine groundwater discharge. These three are the major factors or main sources where one would expect the coastal waters will be affected by through this human activities. So these river discharges are like we know that east coast and west coast. We have a lot of rivers. In fact, India has got many perennial rivers. But if we geographically look into that, most of these perennial rivers are located on the east coast of India, and then major and then perennial rivers. And then west coast of India, we have only that minor to medium rivers. There is not a single major river is discharging on the west coast of India. Unlike on the east coast like Ganges, Brahmaputra, Godavari, they're all perennial and large riverine systems. That type of environment is not there on the west coast. So with this background, I'll just go there. We know that globally the fertilizer consumptions are very highly important for our daily agricultural crop productions and everything. And then if you look at that Indian world scenario, we are standing next to China in our fertilizer consumption. And as of like last 5 years, 5 decades of fertilizer consumption, if you look into that, India's fertilizer consumption from 70s 1.5 million tons, it is now growing to 27 million tons of nutrients are being consumed at this point to feed our dense population. So this is one of the major factor which has been projected that fertilizers are fertilizers, then sewage, untreated sewage, and then many other runoffs, industrial pollutants are going to be affecting our coastal environment. So look at that how these fertilizers are being distributed from the literature information. So per hectare, if you take that unit area crop productions, so the maximum fertilizer consumption is there in the north, undoubtedly. and then followed by east and south are sharing more or less second spot. But then west, northwest, basically Rajasthan, Maharashtra, and then other Gujarat areas, they are the least fertilizer consumption zones. This is the statistics as on 2013. Of course, latest information may have changed slightly, but otherwise the proportion will not change too much. But within that nutrient, the fertilizers, if you look into that the total nitrogen, the fluxes or utilization potential, export load to that coastal environment, much of this nutrients are in the organic fraction. Like on the east coast, out of the 0.59 metric tons, almost like more than half is almost close to half is an organic fraction, and then inorganic and particulate fractions more or less share the proportion balance. But on the west coast, when it comes, dissolved organic carbon and organic nitrogen and inorganic nitrogen more or less both plays that equal proportion. But organic nitrogen export compared to east coast, west coast export is almost like 1/3. So this is another important factor which we need to consider in how that pollutants are distributed, and then fluxes are coming into the coastal seas. But having India stand at second in the fertilizer consumption, but look at that export fluxes from our Indian estuaries to coastal environments. India is nowhere near to rest of the countries. We are far below our export fluxes. Basically, there are multiple reasons why we are having so much of consumption, but our export fluxes are too low. This is the main point which we have to take it into the consideration while making the point that whether our Indian processes are really polluted or not. Apart from the runoff, we also have this groundwater discharges are also going to have lot of influence. The subterraneous groundwater discharge to the coastal seas also contribute a lot of significant fluxes. And seasonally we have the nitrogen, phosphorus, and urea, both dry period and wet periods. Significant fluxes are coming up. But in the recent study, when we look at that, how that east coast and west coast, the fluxes are coming up. On that Arabian Sea, the river fluxes are almost comparable with atmospheric depositions, but then groundwater fluxes are almost half of it, close to. But on the Bay of Bengal, it is also same, river and atmospheric depositions are more or less for the nitrogen it is common. Almost river discharges, all three are almost playing an equal role, whereas in the Arabian Sea it is a different scenario. Rivers and atmospheres takes the major concern, and groundwater discharge is only less. So that way also we have different scenarios. But look at that, despite whether we have too much of runoff and groundwater discharge nutrients coming to the coastal environments, but if too much, that much, if we expect that the discharge of that fluxes both from surface and then groundwater is highly exorbitant fluxes are coming up, we would expect very mass blooming of the phytoplankton all along our coast, considering that highest consumption of the fertilizers. But for us only the seasonal blooms are only coming up, and that too it's more in that southern portions in the west coast. North we don't get much into that. However, in the Bay of Bengal also, the fluxes are not too alarming as we anticipate it with respect to that fluxes. I just take one small example, case study from my own study. Just a minute. So from my own study, like case with the Cochin backwaters, if you take a decadal change, the inorganic and organic nutrients have increased by almost like 6-fold from early 60s to late 2010s, maybe a decade back or no, almost half a decade back, the scenario, if you take it, it's almost like 4 to 6 times, the concentrations for the nutrient loads have increased in the backwaters. However, this load has translated that entire backwaters in the earliest, which was like a highly autotrophic system, like in the pre-monsoon and monsoon, producted by respiration ratios is the indicator of trophic status. And accordingly, during the Qasim, in the late 60s, early 60s, they made a study and then they found that backwaters, Cochin backwaters was a highly autotrophic system. Whereas almost like 5 decades later, in somewhere in 2005, when we made it, we found that it is completely converted to highly heterotrophic system. From a highly autotrophic to highly heterotrophic, the system has translated because of this 4 to 6 fold rise in nutrient concentrations. So what is the consequence of this increase in nutrient concentrations and then switching of the trophic status? Look at that, the thing that nitrification, nitrogen, if you look into that, has oxygen concentrations are still good enough in that lit zones, and then it is only at hypoxic level in the dark compartment, whereas still that denitrification is a very, very mild process over here. And then nitrification and ammonifications, the rates are more or less comparable. And then if you look at the turnout times of the nitrogen, it is almost like less than half a day for ammonia, but almost like 4 to 4.5 days for nitrate is the residency period of this nitrogen in the backwaters, whereas entire water residence time of the backwaters is around 5 days. That means the nutrients are getting recycled very fast even before they are getting discharged to the coastal waters. So thereby one would expect that estuary is acting as a very high sink zone for these anthropogenic nutrients, and then least nutrients are only getting exported to the adjoining coastal waters. It's not the scenario with respect to backwaters alone, but for almost most of the major estuaries of India, this is the same scenario. Like that published literature says that Indian estuaries are almost retaining 91% of nutrients that is entering into the estuaries. So almost like 90% of the nutrients entered into the estuaries of India are getting recycled, and then less than 10% is only getting exported. This is the fundamental issue that our estuaries are trapping that almost 90% share of that load that is entering into the estuaries. So what is the end effect? If you look into that, despite that nutrient load is increased in that Cochin backwaters estuaries, but that the coastal estuary, that oxygen concentrations, we did not find exorbitant changes. They are almost like comparable within the last 5 decades, except for that there is a minor variations which we can account it for interannual variabilities, like between a El Nino year to La Nina year and then IOD year, there might be small variations, one would expect it. Leaving out that minor changes, rest of the changes are basically insignificant. So the anthropogenic effect on the coastal deoxygenation, at least in the south, is insignificant and almost can be treated as negligible. Why that is happening is, again, one thing is, we have that runoffs during the monsoon. As I said, we don't have any perennial or otherwise major river along the west coast. However, whatever the runoff, even we see it. Let us say, for example, during the peak monsoon condition, very close to the coast, near in the nearshore waters, in the 10 meters, 12 meters water depth zones, we can see that salinities drop, surface salinities drop to almost like 17 to 18 ppt. But despite that, that much of low saline waters is not associated with nutrients, whether you talk about ammonia or nitrate, phosphate. None of these nutrients are there associated with the freshwater runoff. So that means the very first spell of that rainwater, one would expect runoff waters carries the nutrients, but there in the subsequent phases of the runoff, the water doesn't carry too much of nutrients. They brings the fresh water, but with very least low amounts of nutrients into that. And recently we have taken up in intensive studies like a project in the marine ecosystem dynamics of Eastern Arabian Sea. All along the entire Eastern Arabian Sea, like West Coast, we had taken continuous observations for 1 year. And during the monsoon, we had 3 observations: early phase in the June, peak phase during the July, and late phase during the September. And all 3 phases, bottom oxygens, I have listed out here in the top figure. In the early phases, we can see that bottom oxygen levels are dropping initially. But then, during the peak phase, it is restricted to the central shell, and then it is further extended to that during the late phase of monsoon. And this is the stage where we get a lot of that upwelling is actively happening over the coast. But same time, look at that that estuaries along the west coast, the southern estuaries, central and the northern estuaries. We had 3 observations: June, September, and December. And what we found is that all these estuaries carry minimum nutrient concentrations in the central estuaries. Unlike in the south and north, where we expect we have already a lot of industrial developed regions like Gujarat, Maharashtra, as well as in the Kerala. We have highly developed regions, anthropocene urbanized environments are there. We have high concentration, but in the central zone, we don't have that much of developmental activities. So Cochin and Mumbai coastal waters, one would expect usually because of high activities that we would expect oxygen levels would be highly degraded. But otherwise, it is other way around. The central zone, which is relatively less developed, has got that anoxic conditions, and that isotopic values which we have cross-checked in the coastal waters is not showing any alarming signals of whether groundwater or always surface or not, except for isolated pockets where the Kochi region, we can see that in the nearshore waters, we can the anthropogenic effect is highly restricted. Crossing that rest of the coast in throughout that monsoon season, that anthropogenic signals are very weak. They are more like a oceanic signals. So we declare it from this intense study that west coast oxygen depletion is not due to human impacts, and then west coast is not a dead zone. Then what is the reason for this west coast anoxia that is confined to the central shell? And we did that oceanic surveys parallelly, apart from the coast offshore regions also we had it, and we found that the major factor governed to this anoxia is basically that upwelling of oxygen minimum zone waters. Though we know that everybody knows that it is upwelling of oxygen minimum zone waters, that oxygen depleted waters is the major factor. But then why it is anoxia is restricted only to the central shelf is because oxygen minimum zone is restricted to almost around like between Mangalore to Ratnagiri. This is the zone where that we have the core of the oxygen minimum zone that carries less than 10 micromoles of oxygen concentrations. Whereas then in the south and north, that oxygen minimum zone concentrations are higher. That means that upwelled waters in the central zone are suboxic in nature at the source itself, whereas in the south and north, they are hypoxic in nature. So the difference in source water oxygen concentrations and then highly suboxic waters coming onto the shelf in the central zone led to that development of anoxic conditions over the center. So this condition is purely like naturally derived. This is what established it. So what would be the consequences? So this is the gradual changes over the months of that hypoxic. But then the volume of that hypoxia is more important than the area per se, because the food web is governed by this oxygen concentrations. The lesser that oxygen zone, then the more of the life is confined to the top thin oxic layer, and then that's where the problem always this central zone gets it. Most of this zooplankton we don't find in the highly anoxic conditions, but that is not the case in the south, where we have the good amount of oxygen conditions are still available being at hypoxia. Like fish mortalities, we usually observe it in the border zones. Goa is coastal waters, and then in the Barmouths, Mandavi, Juvari are ideal hotspots during this late monsoon period. In one of the publication, Nakvi recently has put up this photograph that is taken during the August 2019 in Goa coast, that fish mortality. Similar way, in the same year September, similar somewhere in the Calicut, also similar fish mortality we have observed it. And these are all happening it because of the oxygen gradients, sharp oxygen gradients. And then when fresh water is receding during the late summer monsoons, these fishes get trapped into that fresh zones and then washed ashore. That is the recurrent features. Now, apart from that, Arabian Sea, the Bay of Bengal also has been studied well by that NIO team on its Visakhapatnam branch center. And then that almost like a decadal study has come out with a very clear picture that isotopes, nitrogen isotopes are extended, that land influence is extended maximum of 15 to 20 kilometers. That means from the shore, the signal can be the ambient, the Anthropocene signals becomes an ambient almost like 15 to 20 kilometers from the shore. But the maximum impact is confined to within 2 to 3 kilometers. Beyond that, the rapid dilution, you don't find much of that impact. This is also another point where it proves that whether it is a west coast or east coast, the signals are highly confined to the nearshore regions. Beyond that, the signals are very, very weak. And this is also seen from one of the papers, which says that developed countries have got very small, lesser fluxes of greenhouse gases from the estuaries. But developing nations are producing too much compared to the developed nations. But the study from that again NIO proves that India's greenhouse gas fluxes from the estuaries are not even 10% of what is being produced by that highly developed nations from the Europe, US, and China. So there are contradicting reports, studies from the literature, which distracts that Indian scenario and doesn't put that actual facts. We are making the studies, extensive studies, and trying to prove that our systems are not the way that foreigners are projecting it. Like we all know that there is a COMOPS project of Ministry of Earth Sciences, and NCCR Chennai is coordinating this particular project. And this is almost like more than from late 80s onwards, this project is going on for all entire Indian coastal waters. And then all these years of study summarized in this particular slide is very clearly showing that not more than 2 to 3 kilometers from the coastal zones are only being affected by the anthropocene by this pollution. Otherwise, beyond that, it is insignificant, or we can say that the signals are not to be considered as significant. It's not that in Indian scenario, whether it is east coast or west coast, of late there are emerging studies from the world over are also showing the same pattern, that not that tropical estuaries from India alone are identified as a sink zones. However, tropical estuaries from that other countries, from China, from Canada, from USA, are also being reported recently that their eutrophic estuaries are also being identified as heavily trapping the pollutants, and then only mild fluxes are only being discharged to that coastal adjoining coastal environments. So there is a perception of world over. It need to be we have to give a higher importance. Whether what all has been presented in the literature, that most of the coastal systems around the world are heavily polluted, may need really quick with the proper studies and an assessment. Otherwise, it will the perception carries to the generations that everything is published in the literature is true and can be carried over. That it's a dangerous environment. one has to be very attentive and then cover the, clear that, perceptions, wrong perceptions. Unless otherwise, such type of emerging studies are more and more comes. It will, we can, cannot, change the mindsets and then think. There are few more studies from the literature also. In fact, due to the paucity of the time, I'm not doing it. But then there are no publications in the Nature Communications, Nature, reports, scientific reports are also being, contemplated of late, where, that Indian environments have been, presented, very badly, that they are affected. Even Bombay Seaways has been, shown to be affected, almost like, deep into that, Arabian Sea, as the cause factor for, trichodesmium blooms formation. And hypoxia is the cause factor for, again, trichodesmium blooms. These are not the proven as wrong concepts and wrong things. Of late studies, recent studies have clearly proved that this is nothing short of anything true. So I'm just coming to my summary. Point is that Indian coastal pollution is only sporadic, nothing continuous throughout the coast. And it is confined very much to 2 to 3 kilometers in the densely populated regions only, and rapid dilution beyond that makes that environment normal. And west coast of India is very clearly has been proven both from the hinterland side as well as from the offshore side. It is a naturally driven system because of upwelling of oxygen, suboxic OMZ waters. Internationally, the scenarios are changing up. Like whatever the studies, India is coming up. Indian tropical environments and tropical histories are acting as a heavy sink zone is not confined only from the Indian systems, but also from the other developed nation systems. Also, these concepts are getting proved through the latest publications. So the message or suggestion is that let us not accept whatever has been published in the literature. But if we make a comprehensive assessment, there are many things that has been published can be deferred to be not true. Thank you very much.
Yeah.